All right, and welcome to a very special episode of And Then We Win. I have a very special guest with me, my sister Ashley Singleton. She kind of navigated her space into getting on this episode. You know, when she came out with the idea of like, hey, you got this podcast, we'll do something with mental health and more of social work and also public health spaces. So I'm happy to have her here today. It is rivalry week, so unfortunately she's wearing her Gamecock gear, and you know, it's the Battle of Palmetto this weekend. By the time this episode release, Clemson will be winning that game, so it'll be another celebratory moment there. But we're happy to have her here, even though she's wearing her Gamecock gear.
Go Gamecocks.
Boo Gamecocks. So we're happy to have her here and for her to share her expertise. When the idea came up and she kind of, you know, got her way in there, it made sense. I was like, you know what? Yeah, we ought to have an episode with you here on this space. And so happy to have you here, Ashley.
Thank you for
and
having
we
me here.
are going to have a great conversation here today about public health and mental health and social work and the sports. Who knew that all of these sectors would, you know, meet somewhere? But I think you'll love this conversation today, and you'll hopefully catch on board and see what happens next. And so, of course, my name is Justin Singleton. I am the founder of Just Single Vision, and of course, the lead host for this show, And Then We Win, the Sports Social Work Podcast. And I'm going to, you know, allow Ashley to introduce herself in a way that she feels fitting. If she's my sister, she's awesome. Only bad part about it is she's a Gamecock fan for this rivalry week. But Ashley, go ahead and take it away.
Why does it have to be a bad part? I mean,
it has to be bad.
It does not have to be bad. It has to be good. It has to be great. Right.
Subjective.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Ashley Singleton. So excited to be here with my big brother. So proud of him and this podcast and all the work that he's doing to bring attention to sports social work. It's such a needed thing. And I'm excited to just talk about my lived experience, talk about my journey, how it ties into my career, and just chat it up with my brother.
So you mentioned that, you know, your lived experience, and that was what really kind of brought us to this to the table today.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively, about coming to this table. So tell us about your lived experience. You know, she's going to be kind of very shy. I'm probably going to have to fill in some of the parts of her story from the outside perspective, but I'm going to let you tell a portion of it about how you pretty much single-handedly brought back tennis back to Colleton County High School. We went to the same high school, but because there was a merger after I left, and so it was Walterboro High School. I'm the last Bulldog, and Ashley is one of the few first Cougars, and she kind of helped brought the tennis program back to life. But I'll let her tell her story, and then if she messes up anything, I'll fill it in because I have an outside perspective that's probably more fabricated, but a little bit more truthful too.
Wow, Justin, wow. Yeah. I mean, we grew up in a small town, humble beginnings, like you said in the intro, really rural country town. And I feel like organized sports are more amplified in small towns. Because it's the thing, it's the culture. It's like, oh, Friday night, everybody in town is at the football game, you know, or at the basketball game. It's the culture. And so, you know, sports aren't just sports. Sports are the community. And so, in a lot of ways, people's identity, you know, we think about some of the big names that came out of Walterboro football team. People still talking about them 20 years later.
20 years later, yes. It's like like we talk about like Friday Night Lights. It's true like one of those TV shows and those movies where it's like maybe the whole town may not shut down necessarily.
Yes.
But on Friday night, people are at the stadium. And you just had to be there, either you're on the team or for our town, even the band too.
Yes.
But somehow, some way, Friday night, you had to be at that football field.
Right.
And that was part of your identity for sure.
Right. Oh boy. And so that could, I don't know if we want to address the life situation.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. But that could also put pressure on people, right?
Yeah.
Like if you, especially, and not just people, but teenagers and adolescents, when maybe you feel like you're the star on the team, or maybe you feel like you're not the star on the team. Like that pressure can also feel amplified. And so that's the environment It's something to celebrate, and it's also something to create a safe environment for, right? Like, let's celebrate the high achiever, let's celebrate the wins, and then let's also create safe environments where children and young people feel like it's also okay not to win. It's also okay if you fail. Failing is a lesson learned. And I think that's a big part of my story is being this quote unquote like high achiever. I can't even put the air quotes. It's just like overachiever, the pressure, all of that. And I'll get to that later. But my sport was not football, not basketball, but tennis.
Yes.
Tennis was my game. I love what our parents did, Justin. They said, you got to play a sport. You got to play a sport. You got to play an instrument too. Music was also a big thing in our household. And I'm going to do the same thing with my kids when I have it. Like, you can pick whatever sport you want to pick, but you got to be active. And I was like, okay, I want to play tennis. And I remember Mama being like, tennis? Like, at the time, Serena and Venus was just coming out. That's how I kind of learned about tennis. And I remember Fonzie, our older brother William, being like, I want you to play soccer. I was like, I don't want to play soccer. I want to play tennis. I'm in the 3rd grade talking about playing tennis like Venus and Serena. So, what was really cool and lovely is that there was an older man who was basically semi-pro. I mean, Coach Campbell he probably played on some level of pro leagues or with some pro players. He was an older black man. He wanted to teach black children how to play tennis. And so he only charged like $5 a week or something like that. And Mama would take me to tennis lessons with Coach Campbell, and that's where I got started.
And to provide some context to that, when we talk about even being from a small town, and we talk about tennis, like, even that area, like, we didn't see a lot of black people playing tennis all together from the start. There were a few. I could think of, Mr. Campbell, one, of course, met him through you, and then like seeing Mr. Garrett and Mr. Doyle, but even wasn't that many there. And so tennis was one of those sports. It was just like, okay, it's there.
Right.
But also being from a small town, like, football was king and everything. Football and maybe basketball was okay, but, football.
Yeah.
And so it was like, did any other sport really exist? And so you went into a space of unknown, getting active in a sport, even though Serena, pretty much all the bigger cities and stuff like that, like, okay, tennis was a thing, but like in a small area, you would not see many people participating unless you had a country club or something like that. And we had free tennis courts. And so, like, thinking about your experience of being the tennis player, coming in something new as a 3rd grader, and you already had a little tennis from mom or whatnot. Like, what was that experience like from I guess, for the outsiders, or did you feel any pressure from outsiders or anything like that when it comes to being active in a sport that's not very popular?
I love that. Yeah, I kind of was trying to just be like defiant against William, my older brother, because I was like, I'm not playing soccer. I'm doing what I want to do, And I think it was just something. The other thing is too, I wanted to mention is that there aren't as many opportunities for girls, adolescents, for girls to play organized sports. When you think about, football, basketball, baseball, those things are really big amongst males. You have softball, you got, girls basketball teams, but there just aren't as many opportunities. And the data shows that there are fewer opportunities for girls to play organized sports. So for me, I felt like I had this role model of Venus and Serena, and that's what I followed. That was like my North Star. I didn't have any outside pressure. Now with cross country, I ran cross country in high school, and that ties into the story that we'll talk about in a little bit. But with cross country, that was white females that played soccer, that ran cross country. And a lot of my friends, when I went out there to play to run cross country, my friends were like, girl, why are you out there running 3 miles with them? Like, what are you doing? But again, I didn't have any other, I didn't have as many options. I didn't especially when you're in a small town, you don't have as many organized sports options anyways.
And not even mention that, we've got to add this part. We're talking about a small town that is a school decent size for that county the space, but also a Title I school. So, there's not that much more funding available for certain sports.
Right.
I didn't realize how challenging it was to be a Title I school and try to get a sports program. So I started until I coached soccer as a head coach one year. I'm like, oh my gosh, get all this stuff, get all this money, and get everything prepared, ready for that. So from outside looking in, we have that as a caveat. It's where you talk about tennis, it may not be heavily invested. It doesn't bring a lot of money into the school or anything like that.
Right.
And so it's just like, I even had this sport here.
Right. And the tennis team, so I played all through elementary school with Coach Campbell. Coach Campbell had his old Arthur Ashe wood racket.
Literally.
And what I loved about Coach Campbell when he played, he made it look easy. He knew all the foundations. But anyways, I played all through elementary school, played through middle school as well. And I started playing on the high school varsity boys team. There was no middle school organized tennis team at all. The only thing that was available was varsity boys team. So I would be going to meets and stuff like that, playing against juniors and senior boys because there was no girls team at our school. And so by the time I got to like 8th grade, all of the boys that were on the high school tennis team graduated. And then the entire team disappeared because they were gone. And it was just like me and one other girl. And I can't remember her name, but it was just us two girls playing on the boys team. And she also graduated from high school. So they just disbanded the team altogether. And that's when I started running cross country. Because again, Mama was like, you got to do something. You can't just sit at home. And so that I ran cross country. Did that for a year. That was cool. All right. I can eat honey buns and potato chips and not gain any weight. That's how I treated it. Okay. Whatever. And then the coach, this is wild. The coach the next year was just like, okay, instead of running 3 miles every day, we're going to run 6 miles every day.
Okay, 10K. All right.
I was like, I'm not running 6 miles every day. That's too much for me. That was kind of like the catalyst for me to be like, we need to get tennis up and going. And that was really what we say in public health is youth advocacy. It was my opportunity to advocate for myself, for other young girls who I did know that played tennis. That's when I started, playing with Shanice and some Veronica. And so we had enough to get a team together. I went to Coach Riley and I was like, Coach Riley, what's up? What we got to do to get this team together? He was like, you got to have a coach. You got to have a coach. You got to have enough people on the team. And so Daddy just so happened to have like the right degree or whatever background to be a coach. So I was like, okay, Dad, you gonna come coach the team? And that's how Daddy came in on board.
So I'm gonna go back a little bit because you had a gap year, gap year too, because you went from cross country, you was just like, I'm not really doing that. Well, I'm sorry, go back some. You played with the guys in the team and disbanded, and then you did cross country, and then got that going. So like in between, like what was tennis like for you in between that space? Because I can imagine you like telling them like, I want to play, I still want to play, I still want to get involved with tennis, but I got to do something else. Like, you got a lot of things in the pot there. So
I think that's a really good question because I'll tell you part of my story around tennis is also a story about how I have, when I was growing up, a lot of internalized pressure. There are some people out there, some young people who have like helicopter parents and like, these cheerleader moms or dance moms and like, rah. I didn't have that. That wasn't the issue. Any pressure that I experienced was all up here, which is why I feel like coaching the overachiever is different. And signs of stress for an overachiever looks different. Sometimes people who are looking at kids and trying to pick up like signs of things going wrong, they'll look for things like grades declining or acting out in class. Whereas with the overachiever, those signs aren't there. It often looks like a masking, internalizing pressure and anxiety. It sometimes can look like more productivity, And so I think that's when it's really important for coaches, parents, teachers to be intentional about asking questions of that child or that young person and creating a safe space for them to say, I'm tired. I need rest. I'm stressed out. And that be okay.
That's interesting because, we talk about the obvious signs. There's obvious signs of anxiety, but, when you're I would like to say overachiever, let's say a high achiever.
Yeah.
I like that term better. When you're a high achiever, you're more like, okay, I got to do this, got to do this, got to do that. And then you internalize it a whole lot, so it makes it seem like you're not sweating on the outside.
Yeah.
On the inside, you just a hot mess.
Yeah.
So you say communication, like what should coaches do, or what do you think would have been a safe space for you? What would it like for you when you were in that area of your life, of overachieving or being high achiever, and then like still worrying about everything else?
Right. And I love that question too, because it goes back to your other question that I didn't answer. You asked me about the gap. What was that gap about? The gap for me was kind of like running from the pressure that I was putting on myself on the court. Like I almost felt relief that I wasn't playing anymore because a lot of times, especially playing with varsity boys, I would be on the court beating myself up, or I should have done better, or I should have done that. So to actually leave tennis for a little bit was a relief for me. And it's not that I didn't love the sport anymore. It's just like keeping up with the scores, and it was always in my head. The gap period was actually a relief for me. And then to your other question about, what was your other question?
Just talk about what did that pressure look like? What did you need in that space and that time for? Because like you mentioned how, of course, anxiety and everything like that. When you're high achiever, try to keep it cool, keep balance on the inside.
Right.
And even if you're an underachiever, some of that, where you still have that desire and will to go. You try to be cool and collected as much as on the inside. And some people don't do it well, and some people do very well. But I feel like high achievers, those are the ones that kind of keep it on the inside.
Yeah.
And so, thinking about that in that space, what did little Ashley need? Like, what did little Ashley need for that to happen?
What did the Ashley on the inside need in those moments? Let me tap into that. I think the Ashley in those moments needed to hear from somebody like, oh, what? Your score was whatever, 6-2 or 6-1? Okay, there'll be another game.
Yeah.
Just that easy. You know what I mean? And again, I didn't have any external pressure. None of my coaches, my parents, no friends, nobody put pressure on me to be like, you need to win. So it wasn't that. It's almost like like a pressure cooker. You needed somebody to just release the pressure from, and that would have been release enough. Because then I could start internalizing that. Like, you know what? You're right. It was 6-1. Who cares? I'm not playing to win right now. Is anybody writing a check? Nobody's writing a check for me to win. Hearing those types of things would have helped a lot. I think also just having the space to maybe even just having somebody to say, I'm feeling stressed out right now. Like, this is stressing me out. Having that space to say it out loud.
Okay. Say now, that's often a very important need there because, especially nowadays, well, we come from a different type of pressure or stress or whatnot. For some people, it's like, okay, I have to do this, I have to make it out.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's just like, this is something I enjoy. I still want to be good at it and great at it because I want to be good and great at everything I do.
Yeah.
And so not necessarily I'm trying to use tennis as a way to make it out, but if I'm going to get involved, I want to be good at doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's oftentimes, so it lets you know that there's a range of different types of stress and pressure that happens for many different athletes, because even if you want to be good at great and you really not focus on the scholarship, it's still that it shows up on the court.
Sure.
And so did any of those moments, like bridge to another question. Just thought about this now. Is that did you feel any of that on the court?
Yeah.
Impact some of that pressure, anxiety, even though you had it on the inside and you felt like you was doing good, but did it show up in games?
Yeah. Because I feel like as a high achiever and a young person, we talked about the data around there not being as many opportunities for girls to play. There's also a higher reporting of girls saying that they have they're more lonely, that they have more anxiety than boys. I think I want to make sure I get the statistic right. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But yeah, nearly 3 in 5 teen girls, 57% in the US, reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless in 2021. That's the highest level the CDC has seen in about has seen, period. So I do feel like it shows up on the court because it's just such it's not a path out like we were talking about because I had academics. It wasn't necessarily a path up because there was no up. There was just varsity tennis and that was it. But I do feel like it was a path of approval or it was a path of being the good kid and felt like a weight on me. And that felt like a weight showing up on the court. Again, no one ever said you must win, you must do this to be loved. No one ever said that or even showed that in their action. But somehow it got programmed in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. And the outcomes are there too. Ashley, she may not talk about a whole lot, but she had a couple accolades. She was a Wendy's Heisman candidate. She forgot that she was on a candidate for that. She was on a commercial and everything. Vote for me, Ashley Singleton. And then, you also, was it the Pride of the Cougar Award? Like, you had a big old Cougar trophy on the mantle at home now because of Pride of Cougar. So, it showed all, the accolades were there.
Yeah.
And it was present. Just mention, a little while ago, you started mentioning out some data and some points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You are a public health specialist, and you've done a lot of work with adolescents in this space. And so, being that I'm a social worker in public health, we talk about, all things macro, meso, and micro in some space. And I know public health, you all are, we rely on you all because you bring a lot of stuff to the public. No, I mean, I guess no pun intended, but
I'm here for it.
So thinking about some of your work and where you are now or in the past, thinking about adolescence and what are some things that, social workers should be mindful of based upon your experience with? Come to young people in general, and there's any intersection with what you experience with adolescents, young women, young men, and even in the sports sector now that you've, had opportunity to think about some of these things.
I love this question because public health right now, unfortunately, it's under attack in this country. And in a lot of ways, the sector is being dismantled, defunded. All the really important work is just being torn apart. And it's frustrating because I feel like public health is like the silent ninja in the background, handling business, taking care of things. People don't even really know or see us, but we're there and we're doing the things and doing the work. And so what I would say about just all, public sectors, public health, social services, all of us who are doing this work, we're serving people, really have to come together to work together. Because a child's mental health is no different from their physical health, is no different from their emotional health. All of this happens in one whole being, one whole person. And I do feel like a lot of times we operate in silos. And what I mean by that, because that can kind of feel a little abstract, right? But when you're talking about, maybe a social worker and having a young person on their caseload, and then they may be talking to the mom and dad about this one thing, and then, they're also seeing their doctor, and their doctor's talking to them about this other thing. And everybody's working in all these different areas versus just coming together at one table and helping that child in the community. And there are things like the system of care where they're trying to do just that. Everybody literally is at the table doctors, neighbors, family members, talking about how do we help this child as a whole person. And there's got to be more of that. There's got to be more of that.
Yes, as I mentioned on the previous episode, like how big important of a ecosystem is to making sure that our youth, anybody that's involved with sports, like it's important to have various different people within this space, especially when it comes to social workers, because we work with people individually or in groups or or maybe changes in policy and things like that.
Yeah.
All work together, and so thinking about like how important it is for us to be in this ecosystem. What often are some of the things that I guess in the public health sector that you all thrive in making sure y'all put out there in the community to making sure that we can work together?
Yeah.
Because I think it's different, because you mentioned like you are the ninjas in the background, and so like throwing darts, right, and saving the world. But it's just like, and also you mentioned earlier how we have to come up in the advocacy space too.
Yeah.
So when we think about the advocacy space and what public health workers are doing, what is it that you feel like you should share to the people? Like, these are things that we do that can also help you in so many ways, and we can work together.
Yeah.
But we don't know exactly what you see public health, like, okay, I don't know what that is, but like, so what is it that y'all do where it's just like, okay, now I can put y'all in the ecosystem, now I can see how I fit within your systems of care.
Yeah.
To making sure I have a place at a table.
Yeah. Because the thing about, I feel like public health is that it is broad. I mean, public health can show up in policies. Public health can show up in a doctor's office. I mean, it's a very broad field. Public health can show up in schools. A lot of times people think of public health and they think the local health center, maybe health fairs or something like that. But it is a very broad sector. I work in public health, and I work for project management, managing large grants and funding opportunities. So it looks very different from person to person. But I think at the end of the day, the goal is serving the community and making sure that the communities that we serve have the resources that they need, they have access to information, access to accurate information, not just any old information. There's a lot of stuff out there. And what I think we could do to better bring together different sectors, honestly, Justin, we are always in meetings. We're always in conferences. We're always in all these different public spaces. Why can't we share some of those spaces together? Why is it just public health meeting over here and we're not informing the folks in social work like, hey, we're also doing this thing. You want to come to our meeting, or you want to come to our conference, or have some thought partnerships together? I really do think it starts off with, can we literally come and sit down at a table together?
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, people feel like they have to know what intersectionality is before they get involved. And so there's some places they may not want to take that risk or that chance, like, oh, well, let me just come sit at the table. I don't know if I belong there or anything like that. And so oftentimes I believe it's truly about, okay, let me just come and find out.
Yeah.
And see if there is an opportunity. Dr. Matt Moore, he mentioned in our last episode, he was just like, there's a power of yes. And so a lot of that means where, you say yes because you don't know what can stem from it. Something great can happen from it.
Yeah.
If not, then it doesn't. But at least you took the time and opportunity to see what happens there.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things I even think about it as a sports social worker when we talk about, the importance, the prevalence of anxiety and how you do that for internalizers from high achievers. Like, what information can I get from a public health servant to make sure that I can relay that to my colleagues and peers?
Yeah.
Because, of course, I wrote my dissertation. I've stayed on the CDC website plenty of times and just recognizing, wow, this information is available.
Yeah.
What other big projects are happening? How can I get involved with that? And I think what ends up happening is that, like you said earlier, we need an opportunity to just commingle.
Yeah, seriously.
Commingle
Like,
and be in
can
those
we
spaces.
just talk to
Yeah.
Like, let's all start with conversation. Because mama used to say the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. You know, meaning you over here, we're all doing this work, but we're on the right hand side doing this and that. The left hand side don't know what's going on. And then we duplicate efforts. That's probably been one of my biggest pet peeves of all time working in, the public sector, is because my job has, teetered behavioral health and public health. And then I find out, oh, y'all are doing this suicide prevention work over here with mental health. We're also doing it over here with public health. Why are we not doing it together? There's all these big initiatives coming out of federal and state governments that are funded, that are fully supported, and they're doing similar work. And part of the issue with the pet peeve of mine that I'm having is that then you're creating these vacuums of competition where when you go into one state government office and the behavioral health sector is applying for the same grant public health is applying for, and now they're in competition. They're not working together. And that happens a lot.
And there's some spaces, of course I've been in the grant world, stuff like that, where you can work together and make things happen. So I often think about some of the hot topics within sports social workers, anxiety, mental performance being one of the things that come along with that, even eating disorders and stuff like that. And so I wonder if is there an opportunity? I know y'all do a lot of the breadth of the work, but I also wonder how do we create that relationship? How do we build that bond so that we do have access to public health?
That's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer to it exactly about building the bond. But what I will say is what should be at the center of all that we do is the voice of youth and the families, and what it is that they say they want and need. And I think if we're using them as the center of our work and their voices, it creates these pathways for us to come together. Because too often decisions are being made for families and children. Children are being told what to do because they're too young to make decisions or to say anything. I made a decision that we need a tennis team at my school. My parents didn't tell me I was too young to try, So I really think that we have to, in all the work that we do, center the voices of youth and their families, for sure. That's where we start. Everything else follows behind that.
But what if the voice in the children? Because sometimes you have where voices may need to be challenged sometimes because they're like we do with sports. You have the parent who might talk about that helicopter parent. And they feel like what needs to be best for their child and stuff like that. But okay, necessarily that's not always what's needed.
Right.
Because I know this is what you want, but this is what you don't need, or this is what's not needed as in the best of care. And so I know that you all in the you mentioned it because you all do this work in public health about making sure that you obtain the voices. And so how do you navigate making sure that you hear the voice and make an effort to utilize that voice, but then also it may not be the best voice.
Right. Let's not listen to that voice.
This is what you have come with, we talk about parents with teams and things of that nature, and then you talk about even some coaches or individuals feel like they have the best decision to make for what's best for the whole experience, but you all utilize that. So, what is it? What is it like? What do you do?
I wonder if what we're talking about here too is that maybe the parent themselves are also feeling some anxiety around things. Maybe that helicopter is not just because, it could stem also from their anxiety. It could stem also from maybe they're actually really worried that, their son will end up like them. Or maybe they're actually really worried that their daughter won't make it to college without this scholarship because they don't have the money to pay for college. So I do think even the loudest voice or the voice that may not be going in the right direction, once you get down to the bottom of the intention or where that's coming from, you'll be like, okay, now let's talk about that deeper thing. I think, getting to peeling the layers back.
Yeah, definitely. It don't just layers, but I think for me, I always look at it as the foundation. Like, okay, what is causing you to behave this way?
Yeah.
Because there's a foundation, like you keep building all this stuff on.
Yeah.
Like you build up the anxiety, you build up unnecessary pressure, you build up this attitude where you're just like, and it's going on your child or whatnot. So eventually there's a strong foundation that's there. And sometimes we may need to shift that. Yeah. Because like you said, it's like, okay, well, they may not get a full ride somewhere, but there's other opportunities to, they can still play the sport. Maybe they walk on, maybe get other things that are necessary. So now the big thing is about the NIL with parents. And they're like, okay, let's get this NIL money. And it's like all this different pressure. But like you said, like, okay, what is the reason why? And maybe they may have to go in a traditional, non-traditional route to get there. And that's what you did. Starting the tennis team at the high school. Right. Pretty much non-traditional.
I'm not running 6 miles every day now. Hold on now. That's a little bit too much.
A little too much.
A little bit too much. Let's pull it back a little bit. Yeah, I like what you said about the layers and the pressure. And here's the thing too. Like, I think, okay, I kind of do better by telling stories than trying to explain stuff sometimes.
Sure.
I recently went to a youth summit in Clayton County, and it was phenomenal, Justin. Amazing. They had like 2 youth panels, and I shouldn't call them kids, the young people were talking about their experience in mental health and what they needed and all the things, right? And one young person said, and I'll never forget this, she was like, I need to see a therapist. I need and I want to see a therapist. But I know my parents don't have the money, because I hear them talking about the bills. I hear them talking about all the things. So I don't even ask. I didn't ask, like, hey mom, I want to see a therapist. And then another young person on the panel said, I asked my mom, or I asked my parent, like, I'd like to see a therapist. I need to see somebody. And that parent felt offended and was just like, well, why can't you talk to me? What's going on that you need to talk to somebody else? And took it personally. So I do think a lot of times parents underestimate that type of pressure they put on their children as well. Not only performing and doing well in school, but also the pressure of not asking for help. Like, even if that child feels like, I want to ask for help, I need help, I have this pressure on me that I can't.
And I also think important, just to add on to that, is that when we talk about the ecosystem, it's also important to understand what's available for them. Yeah. And sometimes that takes some of us discovering what that is. Like, I think about in the high school, for instance, we have a lot of our students who are making life decisions when it comes to either academic, sports, or just living day to day, keep the lights on. It's like, what is available for them? And so even if a mom doesn't have a parent or a caregiver doesn't have the money to pay for therapy, like, what other alternatives do exist out there for my child or the person I'm providing care for? What's available in the school? Like, if I am a student athlete, and I feel all this pressure, who can I talk to? Like, I know we don't have X amount of dollars, we don't have much insurance, but who's in the school? Who does my coach have access to? Because most schools and some school districts have school social workers. They may have school psychologists and other areas available for them to seek care. But then it's also like, okay, but what do I know? Who do I know? And what's available for them? So I even think about some of the benefit with public health sector, where they do a lot of publishing and a lot of marketing of the services and needs available. Maybe that's the area that we should definitely consider, not only to the parent, caregiver, coach, assistant coach, any individual that's in that child's ecosystem. Like, what do we make sure that we do and say to let them know the services are available? Because they don't have to have this mindset, I have to get out the mud.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, Reverend Cryer Our pastor growing up, he wasn't a trained therapist, but he was the person I literally would go and sit on his couch and talk to him on Sundays after church, just about what I'm going through or needing extra prayer or whatever. And in a lot of ways, he was kind of serving in a role of therapist or counselor for me. I mean, that's what was available to me. That's what I had. So having that positive adult role model in my life made a big difference. I still be Reverend Cryer. I called him today. Reverend Cryer would answer the phone. So that made a big difference. And you're right, like that access, what's available. And I think it's important to have like coaches and teachers even to also be trauma-informed trained, where they know about how trauma can impact a young person and how to respond to that young person who's experiencing who has traumatic experiences going on in the world. So yeah, everybody should be in on this, I think.
What are some other big hard, and you may not have the answer for this, but what are some other the big hard-hitting subjects and factors that the public health field is focusing on center around youth and adolescents? So is there anything like big, is like some of the late breaking stuff or anything new that's coming up that you all have been working on?
I feel like I will say this, what I think is the new trend or the thing that's happening right now is talking about social connection. And that's not just public health. That's happening in private sector. It's happening all over the place. Where we've talked about the loneliness epidemic. We've talked about the data where girls have talked about feeling, the 57% of young adolescent girls reported feeling sad and hopeless in 2021. There's a lot of folks who are in this country, youth and adults, who feel lonely and are not connected in meaningful ways. Not just like, oh, I have a job and I go to work or I'm in school, but talking about real, deep, meaningful connections with other human beings. A lot of people are losing that. And it's showing up in lack of productivity. It's showing up when people are on their screen time all the time. We've seen people with Twitter fingers saying mean things to other
X fingers, no longer Twitter fingers.
You're right. X fingers, but that is really showing up in a major way, that lack of social connection. And how do we bring that back? How do we bring back that community and village to raise a child? That old adage, how do we bring that back?
I'd be interested to see if any type of study or data that shows focus on social isolation, social connection, the team sports atmosphere, because with so many things or so many people, so many things contribute to, well, like, man, I have to be successful at this, and other things like I have to focus on me and making sure I do right and what's necessary. Or even if those who feel like they are part of a team, they're just like, all right, I'm on a team, that's it. But outside of that, there's almost that. For me, like, I remember playing football, I felt social isolation wasn't a thing to me because, like, you had your teammates and, if your class is with you, you hung out, you played football, or you practiced a lot of time. Sometimes the guys would meet up on the weekends and stuff like that. But now thinking about the paradigm shift with, team culture and how people are utilizing sports, I wonder if some of that, I would be interested to see if there's any study on social isolation amongst team sports.
Yeah.
What those variables will be, I'm not sure just yet. I'd love to figure out, but I would wonder if there's there's any connection there with that. Because my research mind is telling me there's something there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it looks like. I'll be very interested in that.
I think that'd be really interesting to look into, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the conference that I went to recently on social connection, this was talking about adults and in the workspace, but one particular company, they did find that even though folks are coming into work in person, they still felt isolated because the connections did not feel authentic, and so there's one thing to just be in space with people, and then there's another thing to say, I'm in space with people where it feels safe, I feel like I can be my real self. I feel like, people are trustworthy. Like that's what is happening in that space versus there is a space where we're all in the same room. There's a big difference.
Big difference. I'd love to tackle into that. I may see what's out there. See some colleagues would be interested in doing that. Like I said, social, like I said, it's a big thing. And when I was speaking at Mars, it's something they mentioned a little bit about that important thing for social connection. So be interested in seeing, how that is even happening on the team aspect. And if the coaches are experiencing this, or maybe they didn't realize that these people are experiencing these things, how do we address that to make sure that builds the cohesiveness beyond the plays? It's happening outside the. I feel like you have that connection. You be authentic self. You perform better.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things. And so it's beyond just like I always say. It's beyond the X's and O's. People talk about that too. Yeah. But it's also like, okay, when you show up and be who you need to be in all these places, you are going to perform in various different spaces.
Yeah. And I think that kind of tags on to what I wanted to have as part of my takeaway message is, when I think about my lived experience and the show, in this wonderful podcast show that you have, and then we win, I think about what all the things need to be in place for a young person before the X's and O's and before the score even goes up. Like that child needs safety. They need to feel like it's okay to fail and it's okay to win. And it's okay to feel like I want to try and explore something else. Or I'm stressed out, need to talk about it. Like creating a safe space for young people, I think is really important because it does, I think, impact how they show up on the field or on the court. So yeah.
That's important there. You kind of jumped the gun a little bit because we usually close the show off with, what are some things you think about when we talk about our tagline and then we win?
Yeah.
What are some of the concepts we talk about that you feel like is important before we even talk about winning? Yeah. And so you hit some of that already so far. But I just wanted to ask, is there anything else about you feel like with your lived experiences, some things we didn't get a chance to talk about until it's shown that you want to share for the next little Ashley that might be out there walking around trying to figure out, I want to start a team, or because there's still some spaces where, like, they got flag football starting to become, in certain cities and areas I know Nashville, they have a flag football for girls and stuff like that amongst the team. I think they play in the spring. And then even when I was coaching, we had a girl that played on our soccer team because the girls' soccer team didn't exist. They died out.
Right.
I guess, what would you share for, like, the little next Ashley who wants to, start up something it's not like access to women or young girls in participating in a sport or anything like that, but they have to be the first one to do it. Yeah,
go for it. Go for it. If it's on your heart to try, find out what it is that you need to have in place and look into your resources all around you. Ask for help from a trusted adult, of course, and just try.
Very important.
Just try. You gotta try. You don't be so afraid to fail or for things to not come together. Because just don't be afraid of that. Just don't be afraid of it.
Awesome.
Go for it. And the other thing I wanted to add is about, for any parents that might be listening, who may be like, well, I don't know, sports, there are injuries, there's this and that, because those are real concerns. I don't want to be dismissive of them, but there is real benefit, lifelong benefits to young people participating in team sports and sports in general. The people who are adults and are active, or young people who play organized sports, are more likely to be active as adults. And I'm still playing tennis now. I just started getting back into it about a year ago, and I love it. And it's been helping me get in shape and the social connection. I'm meeting neighbors in my community, meeting new people, networking. And so there are lifelong benefits to picking up a sport when you're a kid.
And then also, I know the show we talk about usually with youth sports or anything else around sports, but I think as an adult, when she says that it has a lifelong benefits and you play it when you're older too, and maybe might be a topic for another day, is that when you're older, you get involved with a sport that, you know, is going to be a benefit to you for health-wise, but also recognize that you're not 18.
Facts.
Like, so that's another, maybe I'll probably get somebody to talk about that on another topic for another show, but since we're there, and I'm going to go ahead and hit there, it's like, you know, I realize that certain things, like I just, you know, I can't play indoor soccer like I used to anymore.
Okay.
And so it's always important. You stay active, you find other ways. And of course, you can build your way up, but just realize and recognize that you might be a 77 Buick. You're not a 25 Ferrari anymore.
Listen, I'm not running all the way from one side of the court to the other side of the court.
You can make it. You got to build, but you got to build your way up. You know, you got to take your time.
Take your time. Take your time.
That's the topic for another day. Ashley, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Justin.
It's been fun. It's been great, and hopefully people take something away from this conversation today. It was great, and go Cliffs and Tigers. No Gamecocks. Boo. Well, thank you, Ashley, and thank you all for listening, turning into And Then We Win. And this episode has been great. It's been fun. And hopefully come back and join us for the next episode.
Come on back, y'all.
Here.